Hey, what's going on everyone? In this Master Grade review, we'll be taking a look at one of the more menacing suits from the original Mobile Suit Gundam anime series, Char's MS-14S Gelgoog version 2.0. Now this kit was heavily requested, and since version 2.0s are probably my favorite Master Grades, who am I to say no, right? Okay, we'll be reviewing this Master Grade Gelgoog in the usual 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and gimmicks. We'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end we can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully this kit can live up to that 2.0 moniker. Okay, now let's get started with this build. Being released immediately after the Zaku 2 version 2.0, this kit uses a lot of the same engineering. Not that I'm complaining, of course. The 2.0 Zaku's are some of the best kits Bandai's ever made. Of course, with the increased size of this suit, Bandai couldn't just reuse runners. And considering how much plastic is needed for this kit, Bandai decided to slightly simplify some of this engineering. For example, the feet of this Gelgoog are essentially just sized up versions of the Zaku's. But if you compare these two ankle joints, you'll see the Zaku ankle uses a really interesting ball joint connected to a swivel and a hinge, with 2 moving pistons on either side. This Gelgoog still has those 2 moving pistons, but the design is slightly simplified into a basic double ball joint. This makes the inner frame surprisingly straightforward for a 2.0 kit, even relying on a few basic polycaps and key joints. Despite this, Bandai still kept in quite a lot of those 2.0 moving pistons and molded in details to paint up here. This makes this kit both enjoyable for experienced builders and more accessible to beginners. Moving on to the armor, I just love how big some of these pieces are. I mean, this leg armor can literally surround a smaller kit like the Vigna Ghina. This kit is super beefy and I just love it. However, there is a slight downside to this bulk, as it means there needs to be thicker channels in the molding process, or in other words, pretty bad nubs. This is one kit where you'll probably want a little bit of sandpaper on hand, because these nubs are really hard to get down without stressing the plastic. There are also a few in some less than ideal places. Thankfully, if you follow the instructions exactly, you'll notice most of them wind up on the back of the kit, but that kinda went out the window with these legs. These 2 on the front of the leg specifically are super noticeable. Then there are a few on the back, both sides of the knee, and the tip of the toe. Because of these nubs, I'm thinking this kit is a prime candidate for a full paint job. Other than that, this Gelgoog has really amazing part separation, all the armor is molded in the correct color, including this little pink hatch by the way. And there's no terrible seam lines here outside of this one on the back of the leg. This is all around just a really great build from Bandai. The panel lining on this kit is pretty hit or miss though. While most of these lines will hold ink no problem, and they're definitely thick enough to warrant panel lining, there are quite a few that have some issues. Specifically these 4 on the shoulders, these dashes on the arm, and a variety of the dashes and lines on the legs. I ended up going with black paint for my lining, since it won't fade off as quickly. Speaking of paint, there are quite a few places you might want to break out those Gundam markers. First up is the classic pink mono eye. It comes as a separate clear piece, so it's like a 2-minute job to paint up. You do get a sticker for it, but painting was so quick and easy I couldn't resist. Really, a pink Gundam marker is a must-have for any mono eye fan. Next are these black molded in rectangles on the skirts. These are black in the anime appearance, so they're definitely worth a quick touch-up with a black Gundam marker. The sample build of this kit has these thrusters in a metallic red, but in all honesty, they're completely hidden, so I didn't feel that bad skipping out on them. Maybe if you were to display this inner frame on its own. Lastly, there are these hands. As it turns out, the Gelgoog is supposed to have red hands, matching the rest of the suit. While most modern takes of these Zeon suits have them in gray, and I have to admit here, they look pretty cool. But if you're an anime purist like me, it might bug you. If I ever do completely repaint this kit, these hands will definitely be on the to-do list. Alright, this build was essentially a simplified and sized up Zaku 2.0, meaning it's pretty amazing. This is one of those builds that pretty much anyone can enjoy. I do have to take note of these nubs and panel lines though. They weren't deal breaking by any means, but worth mentioning. So let's give this build a near perfect score of 4.5 out of 5. Like most 2.0s, this build was all around just really great. Now for my favorite part of a 2.0 kit, the appearance. Usually version 2.0s go for an anime accurate look, so of course I'm a big fan. So let's dig into this here. First off, I really like the colors on this kit. The pale red is a really nice anime accurate shade, and it has good contrast with this dark red. The yellow is also solid, being just a little bit warmer than you'd expect, blending it in great with these reds. The inner frame gray and black on the feet are also really great. I also really like that you get a dedicated blue for the shield. This is the only place this blue is used, so Bandai easily could have just used inner frame or something, but nope, we get the anime accurate dark blue. Just perfect. The proportions here are also pretty solid. I'm a big fan of how bulky these legs are, and how Bandai didn't even attempt to streamline these thrusters. The chest and head also have just the right amount of bulk to them. The arms, while a little bit lanky, still blend in very well with the rest of this suit. I will say I would have liked the shoulders to have been a bit bigger, but then again, they have some really solid Xeon type curves to them. In fact, everything has a slight curve to it that looks really great in some high contrast lighting. Seriously, I could spend all day testing out lighting effects on this guy. Okay, now here's the big issue for me. It's all these panel lines. This is way more than I was expecting with the 2.0. I mean, just look at these legs. Was all this really necessary? I guess it's because these armor pieces are so large, Bandai decided to spice them up with some detail. But I don't know, it kind of just overloads my eyes. And unfortunately, with how great this red color is, and how thick some of these lines can be, you kinda have to do something with them. This isn't like the GM version 2.0, where you can skip over them and no one will notice. You have to panel line this kit with something, or he'll look super toyish. Of course, I'm sure there are some people that are into all this detailing, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just really isn't my thing, you know? Again, part of me is thinking a full paint job would be fun here, and if I did, I'll more than likely use putty to fill in some of these panel lines. On a brighter note, you get some pretty decent peel and stick caution signs with this kit. While usually I'd be against using these, with this kit being as panel lined as it is, they might actually blend in. The dry transfers are a little bit weaker though. See, much of this sheet is dedicated to caution signs for the thrusters on the inner frame, meaning they won't even be visible most of the time. You do, however, get a nice, albeit small, model number for the shoulder, which I always appreciate. He also comes with this really cool Xeon decal for the shield. It just looks amazing. This whole decal is one piece though, so you'll probably end up with some film connecting the letters. I tried to remove a little bit of it after the fact, but it just wasn't working for me. If you plan to use this decal, you might be better off cutting out and trimming each letter separately before placing it on the shield, just to minimize this film. So in general, this Gelgoog looks really great. I really like the colors and the slight curve everything has. However, the overabundance of panel lines do spoil it a little bit for me, but that's just me. The dry transfer decals are also pretty weak. Still, there's a lot to love here, so let's give this appearance a very solid 4 out of 5. Despite my weird anime biased opinion, this is definitely the best looking Gelgoog out there. Alright, now let's take a look at this articulation. As always, let's start at the feet. You get a very solid tilt upwards, but you don't get anything downwards. There's some fairly stiff movement from the double ball joint in the ankle. It's pretty restricted by the ankle armor though, so you're not going to get too many cool ground poses here. The knees have 2 joints in them, which give you a little bit more than a 90-degree bend in total. The weird thing is, unlike the Kempfer, it's not the thrusters that get in the way here. It's more so just the general engineering of the knee. I do really like this moving knee section though, it looks really cool. The hips are a polycap on a peg with a solid swivel below. The skirts do hamper these hips a little bit though, not as much as you'd expect, but enough to limit your ground poses again. You're definitely going to want to get this kit in the air if you can. However, you really can't out of the box. See, like most modern Master Grades, this kit comes with a special attachment point for use with an action base, but unfortunately, the connection isn't very tight. Stack onto that the weight of this huge kit and he won't stay aerial for long. I ended up using cement to permanently attach this connector piece, and even then, if I get him at the wrong angle, he'll completely fall off. There's a single ball joint in the chest, allowing for some solid all-around movement. You can also pop the chest up too to get some really good spins. It does leave a little bit of a gap here though, but it's totally worth it in my opinion. Moving on up, there's an extra tilt on top that really helps get those katoki poses. These shoulders have a really good pop out. It's about the same movement as that old school Ground Gundam kit. You get the usual spins and lateral movement from the shoulders, just your standard stuff here. The arm itself has a stable 360-degree spin on top, and almost a 180-degree bend from the elbow. This is pretty solid stuff considering how bulky this kit is. Moving on down, the wrists are on ball joints, and the hands have those classic 2.0 fingers. This is probably my favorite type of hand, since the fingers are partially independent, but not so much that they loosen up over time, you know? The head is on a deep ball joint, so you get some pretty decent movement here. Like the Zaku 2.0 kits, when you spin the head, the Mono-Y moves too. It's so cool. Really, try and paint this pink Mono-Y if you can. All in all, the articulation here is just alright. You really only get the most basic of bends, with the only standout joint here being the elbow. Still, I have to give this kit credit considering how hefty this suit is. This really could have been a whole lot worse. So let's give this articulation a slightly above average score of 3.5 out of 5. This articulation really reminds me of the Campfire I reviewed a little while back. However, thanks to more modern engineering, you get a lot more options here. Lastly, let's round this up with these gimmicks. Starting with the beam rifle, I'm a really big fan of this design. It's a cool mix of militaristic detail and a goofy looking scope. I will say the scope comes in clear though, so I painted it real quick with a pink Gundam marker. You can also hold this rifle pretty decently thanks to a peg in the hands. You do have to hold it in a very specific way though, with 2 fingers on the trigger. It's actually not as big of a hassle as you'd think. I will say this stabilizer can get in the way a little bit. Getting a straight shot can be kinda tricky, but it's nothing impossible. Next is my favorite weapon of this kit, this twin beam saber, often referred to as the Vigna Ghina. This is such an interesting take on the beam saber, and is my preferred weapon for posing this kit. You also get 2 different kinds of blades, a straightforward set, and these curved blades that look like they're in motion. This is really cool stuff. You can store this handle on the back of the waist as well. Lastly, for his weapons, you get this huge shield. I can't overstate how big this shield is. It's probably one of the biggest single pieces of plastic I've seen on a standard Master Grade. I mean outside of like the Sazabi or something, right? This kit can also hold the shield fairly decently with it clipping into the back of the hand. With the weight of this shield, you'd expect the hand armor would pry off, but thanks to a single screw in the left hand palm, the hand stays in one piece. This is some real forward thinking on Bandai's part. Of course, the heft of this shield still causes some weight issues, specifically with this polycap joint in the waist. So in general, you're not going to get too many shielding poses here. Honestly though, I really haven't missed them. See, you can attach this shield onto the back of the chest with this really cool movable mount. This lets you move the shield into pretty much any position you want, so you have tons of options for it even if you can't hold it. You can even reach back and grab the shield while it's mounted. You can also store the Vigna Ghina in the shield as well, but in my opinion, it's way cooler stored on the back of the chest. Moving on to some of these extras, you get an extra fin for the head. While I prefer this standard anime fin, you could always swap it out for this stabilizer type with the more angular design. Just like how my last review came with the cow, this Master Grade comes with a 1/100th car. It's the same car Char drove when he met Amuro towards the end of the original series. This car also comes with a miniature statue of Lala you can paint up. This is a really nice touch, considering how important this suit is in her story. And that about does it for these gimmicks. While it does seem a little bit sparse, this is really everything it had in the anime. Plus, everything works pretty well, with a nice attention to detail like the different blades for the Naginata, the screw in the hands for shield stability, and of course this car. We'll have to give these gimmicks a perfect score of 5 out of 5. This is all the mandatory stuff, plus some extras. Alright, time to wrap this up for a final score. The build was a 4.5 out of 5. While a little simplified compared to other 2.0s, this build is still a blast. The appearance received a 4 out of 5. Despite the overabundance of panel lines and weak dry transfers, this Gelgoog still looks great. The articulation was a 3.5 out of 5. For a heftier kit, you get some pretty okay movement here. And lastly, the gimmicks received a 5 out of 5. It's everything you'd expect, working exactly how you'd expect. Tallying all that up, dividing, and of course rounding, this Master Grade Char Gelgoog version 2.0 receives a 4.3 out of 5. In terms of an unrounded percentage, it receives an 85%. That's a pretty solid score for a kit this bulky. Usually fatter kits like this fall flat on their face, being just huge boring bricks, you know? But this Gelgoog version 2.0 was a lot of fun. The build has a lot of those amazing 2.0 details, the articulation was slightly better than you'd expect, and you get all the gimmicks you could ask for. Personally, my only issue is the appearance, and I'm probably in the minority on that one. This is definitely the best Gelgoog in model kit form, and I totally recommend it to anyone interested in this kit. Alright, feel free to leave any questions you have in the comments, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. You can also follow me on Instagram for updates, work in progress builds, the whole deal. I post on there way more often than YouTube, so it's probably the best way to stay in touch. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you next time.